A staple of game night here on 97.3 ESPN is Dave Weinberg. Weinberg Wednesday. He joins us each and every week. He joins us an hour early because I'm on the Sports Bash today instead of on game night. So Dave Weinberg, kind enough to join us on the Boral Kind of Hotline an hour earlier than usual here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
Doing well, Josh. Taking advantage of the nice weather.
Well, then I'm jealous of you because I'm inside all day. So there you go. Enjoy a little extra for me, okay?
I tried.
So, Dave, a lot of stuff. Obviously, the Eagles news, it never ceases. It never stops. And, conversation you and I have been having, really came to the forefront this week, which was this whole thing about Jeffrey Lurie. And, Chris Mortensen, I mentioned this earlier. Chris Mortensen is not a tweeter. So if he is demonstratively tweeting the way he was about the news about Lurie and Jalen Hurts, it's got to be serious. And Mortensen is saying that Jeffrey Lurie is putting his foot down and saying, we are going to build around this young man, and we're going to put him in a position to be successful. Dave, what is your initial thoughts on the Chris Mortensen report about Jeffrey Lurie in terms of Jalen Hurts?
I was a little surprised, quite frankly. I mean, Jeffrey, he has, firm control of the team, no doubt about that, but he's not one to usually make that kind of stuff known to the media. So for Chris to be able to, for him to evidently express that to Chris, that says a lot about their faith in Jalen, and I guess it pretty much puts to bed the fact that they were even considering, taking a quarterback with that number 6 pick. Now it seems like it's Jalen Hurts' team to sink or swim, and we'll find out how it works out.
Dave, you've covered the Eagles for the entirety of the Jeffrey Lurie era, and I think back to all the quarterbacks who have come through here. Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick, Kevin Cobb, Nick Foles, Sam Bradford, Carson Wentz. And it felt like they gave all of those guys multiple chances to be successful and to succeed or fail. And I feel like it's only fair to do the same thing with Jalen Hurts, especially when this is the same organization, Dave, that turned around and said last April and May they couldn't pass on Jalen Hurts. So they obviously drafted this young man for a reason. Yeah,
taking him in the second round when they did, that definitely shows that they thought quite a bit of him and that it has a legitimate future in the NFL. And you're right, they usually they tend to give everybody, whoever the quarterback is, they try to give him every opportunity to succeed. And Jalen's earned that right. I mean, granted, he wasn't gangbusters when he had his 5-game stint or whatever it was, but I thought he showed a lot of potential, and people seem to keep forgetting that he had no preseason. He had no training camp. He had no off season. He had no chance to work with the first team during practice for the first 10, 11 games of the year. So he basically went in there, just cold and did what he did. So the fact that he has a new coaching staff, has a full off season to learn the system, get comfortable with his teammates. I think he's got a pretty good future, to be honest with you.
What about also the fact that, this offensive line was historically injured last year? I mean, there's never been an offensive line with this many starting combinations in NFL history.
Right.
I mean, if they're at least mostly healthy this year, Kelsey's coming back for one more year. We've seen Brandon Brooks come back from injuries before, Lane Johnson come back from injuries before. If those guys are healthy, and I think Mailata showed you something last year, Sayamalu's serviceable, I think the offensive line in front of Hurts is going to put him in a position to be successful as well.
Yeah, they should. I mean, if they can stay healthy, that's definitely the case. I'm not so sure that Mailata is going to be the left tackle. I know that there's some people have come out and said that, but I can't imagine them just putting Andre Dillard on a bench like that, being the fact that he was the first round pick 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Was injured last year. He was going to be the starter until he got hurt. So I kind of think this is Andre's job to lose. I know Jordan shows some potential, and Andre struggled in his brief appearances as a rookie, but remember he was at right tackle, not left tackle for these games, a position he had never played before in his life. So, but regardless of whoever the left tackle is, I think that they're in pretty good shape, considered, like you said, with Kelsey being the anchor of that offensive line, Brooks coming back. He's, when he's healthy, he's as good a guard as there is, and Lane Johnson as well as right tackle. So yeah, I think they're doing their best to try to put Jalen in a position to succeed, and that starts with getting a great offensive line in front of him.
speaking of Kelsey, he's not just coming back, but he's restructuring his contract as part of him coming back, getting a nice, chunk of money up front as that signing bonus for the restructure instead of some of it going against the cap. And I got to ask you, Dave, what is your perspective on all these guys who are restructuring contracts? We heard last week from Adam Kaplan, for example. He said that not every NFL player wants to restructure their contract, that there are a lot of player agents who tell players don't restructure your contract. Is there something to be said with the fact that these so many Eagle players are willing to restructure, or is this just part of the way the Eagles do business?
A little bit of both. I think it speaks a lot to Jason Kelsey's character. Same thing with Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, or what have you. They are, they're team players. This is all about money, and it is a business, but they're also loyal to the Eagles, and they seem to be willing to do whatever it takes to help the team. And if that means restructuring their contract, they seem like they're perfectly willing to do so. And that says a lot about the culture within that locker room and with that franchise too. There are guys who would just jump from team to team, or just take the money and run, or what have you. Or it's all about the money with them. But these guys are they're cut from a different cloth. I think they're granted, contract is important to them, but they're also willing to do what it takes to help the franchise if they can.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19 and check out his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com. Dave, I'm going to draw you in a little bit into this back and forth people are having, at least for us here on 97.3 ESPN. I feel like I can't escape it today, so I might as well ask you about it, and that is, should the Eagles not consider Kyle Pitts at the 6th overall pick?
Boy, that's a tough one. Because I personally didn't think so at first. But he's not just a tight end. He's a pretty athletic guy. You can split him outside as well, and he is a playmaker. So I guess you have to consider it. My personal view, though, is I think you go with either, like we've talked about. It doesn't seem like they're going to go with Patrick Surtain, unfortunately, but if Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith are there, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to take Kyle Pitts over either one of those guys. But, if the wide receivers are gone, there's not another guy that you really like, then I could see them taking Kyle Pitts. I mean, it wouldn't be my first pick, but I guess I can see the logic in it.
Yeah, see, I'm not against taking Kyle Pitts per se. My biggest problem, Dave, is, and I know it's a very nuanced thing, so I can ask you this, and maybe the average football fan doesn't want to think about it this way, but to me, Dave, my concern is if you draft a guy like Kyle Pitts, for as talented as he is, he better be somebody that you actually use properly, right? Because, you bring him in there and you try to limit him to something that maybe is not his strength. Because at Florida, he played the X receiver, he played the slot, he played a little halfback, he played outside, he played inside, he played inline, offline. They made him an offensive weapon, as one NFL scout is been quoted by NFL insiders by saying, if you make him just a tight end, I think that's where the problem is. If you limit what he can do, if you use him properly, I am all for it. If you don't use him properly, then I'm concerned.
Right. And supposedly Nick Sirianni has a reputation of making his offense like a tight end, especially, focusing on the tight end in his attack. So I guess under that scenario, then Pitts probably fits. But, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around taking a tight end at number 6. I think it's maybe happened like one other time in the NFL that, a guy's been like the top 6 pick playing that position. And I know the Eagles, I think probably the last time they did it was probably Keith Jackson. And I think that might have been a supplemental draft now that I think about it. But, you can get a really good tight end in the 2nd or 3rd round, as they've proven with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. So this is really good. This is going to put a lot of pressure on that young man if they indeed do take him at 6 overall.
Considering that there's all this chatter about Kyle Pitts and the fact that they decided to back Jalen Hurts 100% like they are we now able to maybe read a little bit more into the hire of Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach from Florida, because he's from Florida. He was coaching there. Kyle Pitts played at Florida. We know that Brian Johnson, he's known Jalen Hurts since he was 4 years old. Maybe should some of the things that are going on, should we maybe have seen this stuff ahead of time because of the hire of the quarterback coach?
That's a good point, Josh. I don't know that Kyle Pitts necessarily plays into that scenario, but I do think that there is something to the fact that, he knows Jalen so well. You want your quarterback to have a certain comfort level with the coaching staff, and the fact that he knows the guy, has known him for years, that should make his progress this year. I think it'll be a little bit faster, a little more comfortable. He won't have to deal with. The guy's a new coach, but he's not new to Jalen, so I think that'll help a lot.
Now, Jalen Hurts was on the Adam Schefter podcast, and he was extremely complimentary of Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle, the two receivers from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Should we read anything into that as well? I mean, obviously, it's that time of year where we're just, reading between the lines. Maybe is Hurts maybe putting out there to say, hey, I would like to play with my former teammates?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, there's probably something that when you're speaking of comfort level, the fact that he's played with those guys at Alabama, that would probably help, I guess. But I don't know if the Eagles are going to base their first-round pick on that. I think they really want to make sure that they hit a home run with this pick, and they certainly would if either of those guys are there. And in addition to Jamar Chase, or I guess Kyle Pitts too. But the fact that he was at Alabama with Patrick Surtain, does that help any?
Well, he didn't talk about Surtain in any of the interviews, so I don't know. I mean, maybe someone has to actually ask him about it, so maybe that's something too. Dave Weinberg joining me here on the Boardwalk on the hotline for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out his extra point columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, I wanted to switch off of the football stuff, a couple of other topics. I wanted to first start with, I know that over the weekend it was a big deal with DeChambeau winning, and he got that text from Tiger Woods. A lot of guys, are really kind of almost, I don't want to say they're playing for Tiger, but as a part of them, they're almost like, it's almost like his situation is like uplifting some of them in some of their play. And I wanted to get your thoughts on all of that.
Actually, I'm a big DeChambeau fan. I know he has some critics. I don't quite know why. He does play the game a different way, and he's built himself up to the point where he can just, bomb away with his driver, hit the ball 360, 370, which is outrageous to me. But he also has an all-around game. But I'm just impressed with his respect for the game, the way that he had such he was so honest and emotional about talking about Arnold Palmer and his relationship with him, and like with Tiger Woods as well. I mean, he has a profound respect for the game, and I think that goes a long way towards telling what kind of individual he is, what kind of character he has, in addition to being a tremendous player. And it's really nice to see that, because the golfers sometimes tend to take on some sort of selfish attitude, all about the money, the sponsors, and all that stuff. But Bryson is one of those guys who really respects the history of the game, the guys who came before him, and the guys who play with him, like you said, with Tiger, for example. So it's made me a big fan of his.
Also in sports this week was the anniversary of the fight, Frazier versus Ali.
Mm-hmm.
1. Dave, you covered boxing for a long time. I got to meet.
Not that long, but yeah.
Well, not that long, literally. Yeah, you're not that old by far. You're 20 years younger than that by at least. But no, but I was gonna say is I got to meet Joe Frazier when I was younger. It's one of the highlights of my life. He was so kind to me as a child. Well, I was 10, but still. He was just such a wonderful human being to me when I was younger. And I just want to get your thoughts on, the importance of the Ali Frazier fights in the history of boxing, because I think a lot of people, they comprehend to an extent the importance of it, but I don't know if people fully understand the impact that it had on the sport of boxing. That I think in some ways people don't realize that when we look at a big boxing fight in today's world, I think a lot of that is because of what Ali and Frazier did all those years ago.
Oh, absolutely. Especially the first fight in 1971. I think I was in 6th grade at the time. And it was the talk of the playground, I'll tell you that. But anyway, it was, I've heard people say that it was not just the most important boxing event, but maybe the most important sports event of all time. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people who watched on closed circuit. That and supersedes Super Bowls and World Series and Grand Slam tennis, what have you. It was just one of those special, iconic moments. These all the fights were with those two guys, and yeah, it was just it kind of transcended sports almost, especially the first one, given the background with Muhammad Ali coming back after dodging the draft and his anti-Vietnam stance, and I was a little. I was insulted. Joe was about the way that he was treated during that whole thing by Ali, and I don't know that he ever got over it. But I'm with you as well. I mean, Joe Frazier was an outstanding individual, a great guy. I can tell you one really quick story. I was like 2005. I was picking up my daughter from college. She went to Jacksonville University at the time, and I was picking her up at the airport in Philly. We stopped and had dinner at the Chicky and Pete's in South Philly. And Joe Frazier happened to be in a booth behind us. And Ashley, kind of hesitantly asked for his autograph. And he had a little card with his picture on it and his address of his gym. And he signed it and gave it to her. And she's 37 years old now and still carries that picture in her wallet to this day. So, that's the kind of impact that he had on people.
Yeah, I don't think people understand that sometimes some of these athletes are way better human beings than they were actually athletes, and I think Joe Frazier definitely fits that category. Dave, one more for you before I let you go. So the topic came up recently. I was having a conversation with Mike Gill on and off the air about turning sports stories in the movies. And if anybody has Disney Plus, I feel like Disney Plus every week is coming out with a new sports movie kind of story at this point. It's getting to the point where I have a queue filled of all these movies, but to me, there's a local story that I think needs to be turned into a movie, and I think this should be if this does happen, you need to be involved in this production. Okay, I think that Matt,
as long as Tom Cruise plays me, I'm okay with it. Go ahead.
Well, I meant maybe in terms of at least helping to write it because you did cover this guy. I think Matt Caesar's life needs to be turned into a Disney movie because he went to such a small school at Lower Cape May. He wins a national title at Villanova. He wins a World Series with the Cubs. He has this incredible life, and now he's an artist. It's like this guy is there's so much there. I mean, to me, that's got to be a Disney movie.
That's a good point, Josh. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, I've known Matt since he was probably, 12 years old or so, because my son actually played for Lower Cape May a few years before him, but he was friends with Matt's brother, Mark, and who was also a tremendous high school baseball player, by the way. But yeah, it's kind of a really storybook kind of story that he's had. Like you said, playing three sports for Lower Cape May, playing two sports for Villanova, winning the title, making the Cubs. I mean, he didn't play in the World Series, but he had a bigger role in helping them get there and received a ring as a result. And yeah, I mean, donating his bone marrow to a little girl in the Ukraine, becoming an accomplished artist now, runs this huge charitable foundation called the Seize the Day Foundation in Cape May that raises thousands and thousands of dollars for bone marrow research. And yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll have to get out my laptop and maybe work on that a little bit.
I'm telling you, you could be the guy who writes the script basically at this point. I mean, you know the whole story better than at least better than anybody that I know. That's for sure.
Thanks for the compliment.
Well, I mean, you're already a good writer. You know this story, and I mean, I saw because one of the movies that came out is the story of the kid from Clemson who it's on Disney Plus right now. The kid from Clemson, he adopted his own brother, so he didn't have to go live in a foster home, and he's taking care of his brother while he's playing on the football team. And I'm watching that movie, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, this is a great story, but there's a story in South Jersey that needs to be a Disney movie. But that was just my my crazy idea I had. So,
that's a good idea. That's not crazy at all, I don't think. By the way, did you see Coming to America? Did you like it?
I did not see Coming to America 2, and part of it is because I don't have Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Listen, I have too many streaming things. I have Disney Plus, I have Hulu, I have Netflix, I have ESPN Plus, I have something else too. I have HBO Max. Like at some point, at some point, it's like, how many more streaming services do I need? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. I'm with you there.
I mean, I literally, it's no joke. I have a queue of stuff to watch, and I still haven't watched like 60% of it, because instead I go home and I end up watching a bunch of games. So,
well, that's kind of your job, so I understand.
Sports gets in the way of my television consumption, Dave. Okay.
I hear you.
He's Dave Weinberg. He joins me each and every week for a Weinberg Wednesday, usually on Game Day on 97.3 ESPN. He was kind enough to join us an hour early here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, at Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Extra Point columns over at 97.3ESPN.com. His podcast, Tequila and Touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. And as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Great stuff today. Appreciated it.
Well, thanks, Josh. Anytime. Thanks for having me.